How you doing? My name's Rob. I'm asking the question today, if Abraham was going to be the father of nations, then why did God ask him to climb up a hill and sacrifice his son and heir? And why is the Ardbeg 10 so very, very good? Welcome to Scotch in Scripture. Today's whiskey is Ardbeg 10, this little guy here, and to be honest with you, I'm down to my last little dram here. Hopefully we can get a full dram out of it. Ardbeg is an Islay. It's a very, very Islay kind of an Islay. Really going to be strong on the smoke, sweet notes on top. It's really great whiskey. It is situated on the south of the island of Islay, and it's actually right next to Laphroaig and Lagavulin, and you've got those three distilleries all sitting right next to them, and then Port Ellen just to the west. And it's quite a magnificent thing. I can imagine that must be one of the best streets in the whole world to live in. I would probably quite enjoy to live in that street. Anyway, it's an Islay. It is 10 years matured in ex-bourbon casks, which give it a really kind of nice malty edge. This colour is something I think is really great. If you're new to the channel, you might not know, I like to clean the glass. I'm going to just use the smallest amount possible here because I really am running out of this stuff. When I say clean it, basically we're just going to cover the edges in the whiskey so that there are no noticeable traces of soap residue or anything that we don't want to smell when we're nosing, because let's face it, we spent a lot of money on this whiskey and we're not wanting to smell fairy liquid or Irish Spring or whatever you might be using to clean your dishes with. Alright, there we go, just enough, just the normal. 10 years. Ardbeg is really, it smells so good, by the way. We'll talk about that in a second. Ardbeg is a distillery that has such a devoted fan club. It's almost cult-like, actually. You might need prayer if you're an Ardbeg fan, because you might not know it, but you might have an idol. So you better check yourself. It's got an amazing cult following. It's a really kind of sought-after whiskey, and they come out with a lot of really interesting expressions. I haven't tried them all, mostly because they are incredibly expensive and quite hard to get here in the States, depending on where you live. But there's some really great stuff. They've got a 5-year-old. I don't tend to recommend it. I think it's just that little bit too young. It's quite aggressive, both on the nose and in the palate and in the finish. I think the 10 really kind of gets past a lot of that and delivers a really, really good dram. They have another expression that I'm really fond of called the Uigdal. Actually, here's in my little whiskey graveyard. This Uigdal here is, if you ever get the chance to have, maybe you've had it before, how would I know? But if you ever have the chance to get yourself a bottle of Uigdal, do it. It's a cask strength. It's going to be about 56-57% ABV, but it is unbelievable and I recommend it. But this is the 10, it's not the Uigdal. So let's talk about the 10. 10 years in a bourbon cask. Yeah, I mean, you just get smoke at the start. Gives way a little bit. I almost got that kind of, what you call a magic marker pen. Sharpie or whatever you want to call it. A little, or sometimes it's like a nail polish remover type smell. Just a little bit on the top. If you dig a little deeper, you get a little dark chocolate. The official notes say tarry rope, which I think is a little bit of poetic license, I suppose, if you go looking for it. You'd really have to go looking for it. I'm not getting that at all, but you're just getting those sort of pleasing aromas of campfire on the beach. Actually, it kind of reminds me of being in youth groups in Scotland growing up. We would do like a worship night on a beach somewhere on the west coast, and the wind would be blowing and the smoke would be going in people's eyes, and you would think there was, really emotional thing happening, but people were just crying because they couldn't see straight. Good memories. Amazing smell. I mean, the nose on the Ardbeg, all the Ardbegs is just stunning, except for that 5. That's a bit too much for me. Alright, 10 seconds on the tongue because it's been 10 years in the barrel and we're going to respect that. Slàinte. I've seen it described on a whiskey Facebook group. Yeah, I'm that old that I use Facebook. As liquid barbecue, and you really do get that. But it's not all that Ardbeg is, and I sometimes think people miss the other parts of it. It's still a refined whiskey. There's more to it than just smoke. It markets itself as incredibly smoky and peaty, and it is. But there's more. There's, you know, there's a cereal note. Where there is a cereal note with a lot of whiskies, but there's a kind of a sweet, almost like a pear. Bit more like candied pear, like pear drops. I don't know if you have pear drops in the States or Canada or whatever, but in Scotland, pear drops were they were like currency on the playground. There's a lot of things you could trade your pear drops for, let me tell you. Yeah, you get a little pepper in the finish as well, a little pepper exploding on the back of the tongue. Smoke, of course, kind of sweet barbecue smoke. Almond, maybe. What's that? Kind of menthol as well, just a little bit of menthol, just ever so subtly in the background, not like a Vicks vapor rub, but a real gentle, just more like a sensation of menthol, maybe more than a flavour. Sensational. It really is a good dram, and the good thing about Ardbeg as well is you can get it anywhere. Like the Ardbeg 10 is easy to find. You'll find that. I mean, you can get it in Target in the States. You'll probably pay anywhere between 50 to 65, maybe $70 a bottle. I think 60 is probably a good price point. If you can find that, that's going to be competitive with Lefroy 10, Glenmorangie, a lot of the whiskies you'll find in most places. I like it. I like how pale it is. It's quite different to so many of the Islas are going to have much more of a golden hue. It's just one of the things that makes it unique, and that's really what I enjoy. Abraham loves Isaac. He loves Isaac more than anything in the world. He's waited so long for Isaac to be born and to become his heir. But the sacrifice is necessary to please God, and Abraham responds, and that's the first point. And the first point in any story of faith, whether it's a story that you have of your own life or a story you've heard or whatever, the first point is always response. You can respond in the affirmative or you can respond in the negative and take your chances. But Abraham responds, and we don't know why yet, but he still responds. Abraham has got to be going through hell in this journey. He's got to be going through mental and emotional hell all the way through this journey. Sometimes I stop when I'm reading Genesis 22 and I think about what Abram was actually going through, and on that journey, what was going through that man's head at that point. It must have been brutal for him. So good. Isaac, well, he doesn't have a clue what's going on. Abraham, meanwhile, is absolutely sweating bullets. He knows what's going on. He knows what he's been asked to do. But Isaac, through his father's example, is able to do this journey. I'm thinking he probably did journeys like this with Abraham all the time. It's a father-son thing. That's what they did. They went on journeys. They did sacrifices. They talked about God. Isaac's not worried about it. He's just trusting his father. Abraham's also trusting his father, and Isaac doesn't know about it. But the poor guy has got to be absolutely sweating bullets. But isn't that something for us to think about as fathers? How many times are things going on that our kids know about and they pick up on, and they're asking us for answers, and we're saying, you know what, God's going to take care of us, God's going to provide. Do we really believe it at that time? Do we really believe it in the moment? I'm sure that we do, but you're always walking that fine line of going, man, is God going to show up? Is he going to provide? That's what faith is. It's a commitment to believing that God's going to do what he's going to do. And our kids are watching us in these moments, just as Isaac is watching Abraham. See, that's the thing. Oh my goodness. See, that's what I love about the Ardbeg. The flavours, the sweetness starts to really appear on that second or third sip. When you hold it in the palate, and that's the reason why I do the Richard Paterson method, you can Google that. When you hold it on the palate for as many seconds as it's been in a barrel for years, you really get to experience all the flavours. I cannot recommend it highly enough, and I don't understand why you spend all that money on whiskey and just gulp it. It doesn't make any sense to me. The thing I like to think about with this story, and what always strikes me, and maybe this is the worship leader in me speaking, they stop and do a worship service before they continue up towards the sacrifice. So Abraham dismisses his guys and he takes Isaac up with him and they begin to worship God. Now again, Isaac's worshipping in innocence. Isaac's worshipping from a place of trust. Abraham is worshipping from a place of obedient faith. He is going through it and he still worships. And again, you've got to ask yourself, how many times when you're really going through it, do you still find yourself able and willing and obedient enough to worship God? Big question. And as you let those flavours settle in, think about this. The last point that I always think about in this story is Abraham has taken it to the very point of raising the knife, getting ready to plunge it, getting ready to kill his son. He actually takes it that far. How many of us would even get up the hill? Probably none of us, but he gets to the point where he takes it all the way up. He's got his son tied down and he's lifted the knife and he's ready to strike. I bet he's probably in the motion of going to strike before the angel shows up and tells him, hey, you don't need to do this anymore. God's pleased with Abraham because Abraham does something that most people never get to do, or they never get themselves to do. He responds, and not only does he respond, he journeys in faith, and not only does he journey in faith, he's obedient, and not only is he obedient, he's obedient to the point of sacrificing everything. I mean, Isaac is his whole world, and Abraham is about to sacrifice his whole world for God. What does that make you think of? So my encouragement to you with the story of Abraham and Isaac is this. God desires something of us, and it's more than sacrifice. And you'll see that later on in the story of Saul and losing his kingdom to David. That obedience is better than sacrifice, and obedience is what God is looking for. And we can all probably boast a little bit about sacrifice. Most of us have been in a spot where we've turned up early, we've stayed late, we've maybe, we've driven people around, or we've tithed and it's hurt us a little bit, or whatever we've done. A lot of us have done a lot of stuff that's cost us a little bit. But have you been obedient? Not just in the things we're asked to sacrifice, but in the things that God wants us to do. And really being obedient in keeping his commands and keeping his statutes is sacrificial, because there's things that the flesh wants to do that God's saying don't do it. There's reward if you don't do it. So I want to encourage you over a nice wee dram of Ardbeg 10 to be obedient, not just sacrificial, to be obedient in your faith and to keep fighting the good fight. And if you're asked to walk up a hill, don't walk up the hill alone, walk up the hill with God. See where he takes you, see how he provides, because he always does. This has been Abraham and Isaac and the Ardbeg 10. May it be a blessing to you. God bless you guys. Slàinte mhath.